Welcome to the Don't Call It Small Business Podcast, powered by Foreman & Associates, LLC, a consulting and professional development services firm. I'm your host, Natasha Foreman. Our podcast provides professionals and organizational leaders with helpful advice, tips, and business news that you can use for training, development, strategic realignment, and more. We examine the tough questions and issues impacting our businesses, households, and communities. If you like what you hear and find the content useful, please share us with your inner circle. Now that we've covered that and you've learned a little about us and why we do what we do, let's get to work. Join us for today's episode. Hey! Hey everyone, it's Natasha Foreman. Oh my goodness, it's so good to be here with you today. Good to be here, good to be heard. Oh my goodness, we are jumping into part 2 of our multi-part series, How to Start a Business, episode 89. If you have not heard episode 88, I strongly recommend that you go ahead and just pause me, listen to episode 88, take good notes, write down all the questions that you need for the homework assignment, and then come to this episode, because if not, it just becomes overwhelming. And as I said on the previous episode, and what I'm going to say most likely every episode, these series are not just for passive entertainment. You know, really, if you're trying to dive in, if you want to commit to starting a business, to reigniting your business, then you need to dive in it and go hard or go home, basically. And I say that because so many of us say that we want something, and then we find ourselves sulking and moping around because we don't seem to achieve it. And that's because we may be interested in it, but we aren't committed to it. And there is a big difference. I can be interested in skiing, but if I'm not committed to learning and practicing and training as a skier, and guess what? Either it's not going to happen, or I'm going to injure myself. Whatever the case may be, I will never be what I could be if I actually committed myself to this. And so, as I've shared many times, a business is a relationship. And matter of fact, it's a culmination of relationships, because every human that has some type of impact on your business, or that is impacted by your business, in turn has a relationship with your business. So I just want to make sure that you are committed to a business. You're not just interested in one. Maybe these episodes will help you determine if whether or not there is interest, or whether or not there is a commitment. If you really want to have this, or if it's just something that sounds really good. And maybe it's something where you realize that, no, I just really need to stick with this being a hobby, or sometimey thing. But this is definitely not something that I need to pursue, head on full time. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page with that. So if you did catch the last episode, then you understood that you had to really search your heart. It was a exploration right there. That was an explorative experience. You need to be able to search your heart and your mind to see if they were aligned and prepared for the journey as a business owner. The goal is to hopefully transition from owner to operator, right? So to put yourself in a position where you empower other people to assume roles within your company that free you to then be able to pursue other things that can support the operations of the business without you having to be there day in and day out, grinding in year 25 like you did in years 1 through 5, if that makes sense. If you are still willing to brave the storms, then let's go to the next stage. I hope you have something to take notes with. I just want to be able to look back on what we talked about last week. I hope I didn't scare anyone into or scare you in a way that discouraged you from pursuing business. My goal is to speak truth to the myths, the lies, the half-truths, so to speak, that a lot of people espouse when they're talking about starting a business, and that anyone can do it, and it's for anyone, and that is lickety split. I mean, yes, you can just do the formalities of the administrative steps to start a business, but the grit and determination, the sweat, the blood, the tears, everything else that goes with it, all of the embarrassing bodily functions that go with it, those are the things that we have to be honest about, because it requires a mindset that we are not taught at any point leading up to this. You're not taught this in high school. You are taught elements of it in college, but until you walk it, until it is something that is, that you are going through the birthing process and the molding process of, you really will not get it. And so I want to be able to truly help you with this so that you can commit in the ways that honor you in the character that you have and the character that you hope to achieve, to grow to. So this is not just some blowing smoke up your butt. I'm not here to just the kumbaya, the rah, rah, rah. This is the real and the raw. Seriously. So last week, the last episode, we looked in your heart. We started exploring your mind. We will continue, exploring both each episode, because it's something that you're going to have to do throughout the life of your business or your life, whichever lasts the longest. So I want you to write down these questions to be able to reflect on and answer truthfully, right? Don't do too much, pontification on it where you're, all of a sudden it ends up being analysis paralysis. But at the same token, I need you to know what's true for you and what's true for the business ideas that you want to manifest. So what kind of company do you want to launch? Is it, catering? Is it hair? You want to be a hairstylist? You want a full service salon? Do you want to be, real estate? Do you want to, go into as an agent, broker, developer? What do you want to do? Do you want a nonprofit? What kind of nonprofit? So I want you to think about the industry that your company would be nestled within. The industry happens to, if you really think about the, manufacturing, so forth, that ends up being its own community. And so there's a lot of resources that are available based on your industry as well. When you're thinking of your company, what type of products or services or services, because you could have both. What do you want to offer the community? We'll get into the why of that, but I want to know why this type of company. All right, we'll get into the product in a second, but I want you to focus on why specifically this company. Why do you want to have a real estate company? Why do you want to have a catering company? Why do you want to have a child care center? Why do you want to, whatever it is? And why are you interested in it? Because sometimes we have an idea of, I could be able to launch this business, but what is your interest in that type of business? Because your ability to launch something that's fine. We could launch 20 different companies, but what is your personal interest in it? Where is the investment that you have that is driving you to think about it? Are you dreaming about it? What is drawing you to that specific type of company? And when we talk about the products and services that your company can provide, is there an actual need for them? That, do you see that people want what you have to offer, or that you want to offer? And how do you know? Like, what market research have you done besides the feedback from family and friends? Because family and friends sometimes will parrot back to us what we've said. So, or you may have heard someone say something, family or friends, and you're like, oh, I could do that. But have you gone beyond your core group to determine whether or not that product or that service is actually needed by more than a handful of people? Because if it's just a small group of people, how often will you be able to generate a sale from them? How often can you keep providing them that service, and that they're willing to pay you for that service? And trust and believe, I've had plenty of companies that I'm trying to share an opportunity, provide a service, provide some way in which I can better assist, friends and family. And then at some point, they start wanting a hookup. They start wanting you to give it to them for such a deep discount. And you're like, look, fool, I'm already giving it to you for 60% off. Or like, oh, what else you want me to do? So just being mindful of that. Okay. So, what market research have you done? And then, as I mentioned, the industry, right? That industry is a community of other companies. Are there any other companies that are offering the same products and services or something similar to what you're trying to offer? And where are they offering it? So are they online only? Are they brick and mortar, like they have a physical store location or, warehouse? Is it a hybrid? So do they have a physical location, but they also do business online? How long have they been in business? Have they been in business, 2 years, 25 years, 120 years? Because that's important, right? You need to know how long they have been sharing their products and services with the people that you are trying to, sway towards your way. So you need to know that. And something else that's important is when you're looking at those other companies, have you tried their products and services? And if so, what's your honest opinion about how they deliver it, how it's packaged, the quality, the quantity that they provide? Does the quantity they provide, is it worth the price of what they're offering, right? So if it's, let's say they bake cookies, and let's say they sell 4 cookies for $14.99, and you're like, it's not $14.99 worth of cookies. Like, what in the frackanakle, right? So, thinking about that. Also, have you done research to review their customer feedback? Have you looked at their customer reviews? Gone online to whether it's their sites or something they provide through Facebook or whatever the case may be? Have you been able to look into all of that? And then something else to consider, is what do their current or former employees say about them? Now, I know that's a slippery slope, right? Because you can go on to some of those sites and people are bashing their employer because they're upset about something. And so they just decide to just do a landslide of insults. But you can also gauge a lot about the company from some of the feedback that current and former employees say about the company. And I'm not talking about that they may not speak specifically about the products and services, but sometimes they do. So, for instance, I was in a restaurant. I'm not going to say the name of the restaurant. I was in a restaurant yesterday, and this restaurant is known for their fried chicken. I don't eat meat anymore. I don't eat chicken anymore. So now, if someone, I'll sample something. So I'm not like that hardcore. But since 2020, I became a vegetarian. And with that, I was trying to find something on the menu that I could eat. That was not chicken or, any other animal, product. So anyway, other than eggs. Anyway, he then says to me, well, our chicken's good, but it's not as good as, and he said Popeyes. Now, this is, I was like, what? And I'm like, how could you say that and you work for this restaurant? And he was like, what? Popeyes is good. I love Popeyes. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, yeah. I says, well, Popeyes doesn't serve waffles. And I said, you guys are known. And I said, and they don't serve pancakes, and they don't serve, so I'm naming different breakfast things, right? And he says, oh, you mean our Eggos? And I said, what? He said, our Eggo waffles. I just fell out laughing because I'm like, it's an employee in a restaurant, a server in a restaurant or whatever. I can't think of his. And I sat back and I thought briefly to myself, because I was meeting a client there. And what I thought about was, I could have been a secret shopper. I could have been, part of like the company's undercover, boss type thing, right? I could have been part of undercover HR, undercover, quality control, whatever the case may be. And do I want an employee working for me who thinks my competition, which isn't even a direct competitor, not even although they're both considered restaurants, one is a fast food restaurant and the other one is a, sit down, is a dining type restaurant, right? Do I want if my employees feel like that? Like, how do you know whether or not if your employees are even have a buy-in to the quality of the food that you provide? Like, they can't even be able to attest to your customer base strong recommendations that they have because they actually prefer another company's product over your own. And that was like, whoa, so with that, that feedback is very helpful. Now, if I were looking to start my own restaurant of sorts, that'd be valuable information, because I'm looking at, that's just one employee. Now, of course, I could turn around and come to their different, locations and speak to different employees, engage how they feel about the food, the quality, and the taste of the food, things of that nature, and where they would rate it on a scale in comparison to other restaurants of different styles, right? To then determine whether or not my food in my restaurant could possibly have, could possibly get up, some of that market share, could possibly sway some of the attention, especially if enough people with word of mouth and possibly advertising and any ways in which I could be able to allow people to sample my food, where they could then be able to compare my food to this other restaurant who would possibly, be within a, 25-mile radius of me. If I could possibly lure some of their customers my way for whatever. So they may have other product offerings that I don't, that makes them still want to have a sense of loyalty to this particular restaurant. But what if I'm able to lure them over because, hey, my chicken is better, or, my okra, or whatever the case may be. So that's just certain things that you can be able to do to gauge whether or not, just because there's a competitor in the market, it doesn't mean that they have a strong footing because of what they're delivering, but just because they're maybe the only ones delivering it, if that makes sense. So we will dive deeper into that element in an upcoming episode, but I just want to kind of, pull back the lid on that for a moment for you to just kind of peek in to see why customer reviews as well as the reviews from current and former employees could be beneficial. Now, when you're looking at these other companies, think about what makes them special or what makes them a dud, right? Why are they the bee's knees, right? Why are they so special? Or why people are like, oh my gosh, don't even go there. And why are people saying don't go there? If you're seeing that they're getting one star on these different review sites, why? But if they're getting 4 and 5 stars, why? You need to know this information. And, I mentioned this in the previous episode, but is that company or the companies that you're looking at, that you're comparing your idea to, you're comparing your company to, are those companies, previous employers, or is the company a current employer? And the reason why I say that is because, as I mentioned before, sometimes we have a tendency of thinking we could do better because we work for that, the company, and we've been able to see elements of it. So whatever we don't like, we think that we can do better. But you have to be able to really ask yourself, why do you think that you can do what they do as good or better than they can? Are your products and services better than or equal to theirs? And how do you know? And when and where have you tested your theory? Because if you haven't had enough people sampling, their foods compared to yours, or sampling your nail polish to theirs, or whatever the case may be, your service to theirs, there's no way for you to really be able to gauge other than your own biased opinion. So just be aware of that when you're trying to have a sample market to determine the quality and consistency and anything else that goes into your comparison. And like I said, remember the Coke and Pepsi challenge, they put put them side by side. We've seen other side by side comparisons, right? And they do that blind taste, the tester, to see whether or not people can tell the difference between the two, but also which ones they prefer. You kind of have to have, similar experience in a way. So even if you're trying to have a house cleaning service, if whether or not you're, trying to find out who customers are currently using or just finished using, and for them to be able to tell you what they liked and did not like about the service they had, based on that evaluation, you then know what you have to be able to achieve or exceed, or just knock way out of the ballpark in order for them to then want to not only use your service a second time, but repeatedly, right? So those are things to also be mindful of. Now, I will say, if let's say you're going to school, you want to be, let's say, a plastic surgeon. So, of course, the proof is going to be in the pudding. So you're going to have images of the work that you've already done. Now, usually when you first open up shop, I hate to say shop like that because it makes it sound kind of Frankenstein-ish type of thing, but when you're first opening operations, usually, who are plastic surgeons probably doing most of their initial work on is probably family and friends, for low to no cost, right? So that you can actually have some of those images to provide. I don't know about you, but if someone just opened up a new place up front, I probably wouldn't dive in it. Oh yeah, let me go ahead and have them do work on me. So with that, you usually, something's gonna, be word of mouth. There's gonna be some advertising, but even in the advertising, they could use various images, but you don't know if the images that are in those ads are actual patients or if it's stock footage. So, when you come in, maybe you do a consultation and then you're looking through their lookbook or sorts, like their portfolio, and they're showing you various images of people that have had nose jobs or, chin lifts or whatever the case may be. And you're like, oh, wow. And maybe that doctor goes a step farther and shows you some images of, botched surgeries and provides their analysis as to where the surgery went wrong and what should have been done and the techniques that should have been, followed through with, but their practice actually does. And you can then see, okay, that makes sense. And then you have, a sense of confidence in their skills and their abilities and so on and so forth. That's just one example. The same is true with dentists. How do you know? Most of us pick a dentist from our insurance, coverage. And we're like, okay, here's the dentist and hopefully this is the right one. But how many of you actually ask the dentist to show you their portfolio of work done? I want to see, the work that, the braces that you've put on someone's teeth or the implants in their dental implants or the reconstructive dental surgery you've done or whatever the case may be. I want to see this work to see whether or not you actually can walk the walk, or if you just got this this license and you're just out here, butchering people's mouths and no one is reporting you because they don't know where to report you. So these are different things that can be very beneficial. And as I mentioned about those other businesses that you've been able to observe in the industry, in the close proximity of possibly where you want to launch your business, what's going to make your business stand out? Or how are you going to best reach the customers that you are seeking? Will you have your business solely online? Will it be brick and mortar? Will it be hybrid? And does the industry traditionally operate in this way? Or are you going to be, outlier and try something new and different? So how are you determining and making the decision on this particular delivery environment? How are you deciding that brick and mortar is the best bet for you? Or how are you deciding that online is going to be the best for you, or a hybrid? And is your business model, or does it require, regular real-time customer engagement? What I mean by that is to be actively engaged with your customers. Is that a necessity, or can it be passive engagement? So if, for instance, you're selling food through a food truck or a restaurant, it's obvious that you have to have active engagement, right? If you're selling products online, then it's possible that your customer support needs, may not require 24/7 online chat or phone support. So you may be able to, maneuver around that. Maybe your policy is that you'll respond to inquiries within 48 to 72 hours or 24 hours, or you may say as soon as possible. You don't need the granular details at this very moment as you're listening to me, but you should know the basics of what your customers will expect from you. It's like people want to be able to get an answer, provide feedback. They need a refund. They need an exchange of something. They don't want to wait, weeks in order to hear back from you. So you have to be mindful of that. And as we're thinking about our customers, our clients, how many do you visualize as the ideal number that you would like to maintain during your first year of operation? Like, whatever that number is, 20, 200, 2,000, whatever that number is, keep that image, keep that number in your mind, because we're going to address this later as well. All right, so if your business will operate as a hybrid or traditional brick and mortar, you need to be well versed on, let's say, commercial real estate, leasing spaces, insurance needs, so on and so forth. There's some legalities and some other nuances that must be addressed before you can officially open the doors for your business. And this is even true if you're trying to pursue the idea of a food truck or a kiosk in a mall or shopping center. There's still legal and financial requirements that far exceed what an online business is going to be required to do. Because an online business does not need a human being to enter their premises in order to conduct business. So there are some things that go into place because liability is increased the moment you have any type of human interaction with your workplace, as well as the proximity of humans to any type of equipment that is required for the creation of or the maintenance of any product that you deliver. And we will discuss legalities and financials in future episodes, and I'll also be bringing in some various professionals who can address the legal and financial side of things, and with some in-depth analysis for you as well. So I mentioned the customers. I want you guys to quickly describe your ideal customers. Outline the demographics of your target market. When you first think of those customers, describe them. What do they look like? How do they engage with you? What age range are they in? What type of economic backgrounds are they coming from, right? Are you dealing with folks that are, high wealth individuals? Are you dealing with just everyday Joe, Jane, and Jose and Jackson and, Juanita and everyone, who are you dealing with? Or do you have a very unique niche market and they're between the ages of 60 and 80? And their disposable income is $500,000 and above. And that's where you're focusing your attention. Are the demographics of your customer base, folks that have, dry skin, oily skin, curly hair, or are you dealing with people that are a certain height, a certain build, right? You may be dealing with the someone who they're 6 feet and up in height, and that's the clothes that you're making. You're making clothes for people that are 6'5" and up, or whatever the case may be. Think about those demographics, the ideal customers, and you're going to be outlining and really narrowing in that target market. We're going to explore more later, but for now, I just want you to visualize and describe them, and what you desire most from that relationship with them. What are the first few descriptors that come to mind? I want you to write those down. Are they friendly? Are they supportive? Are they always providing suggestions? Are they nice to your employees? Do they leave reviews that are helpful? Do they, are they completing the surveys that you send out so that you can improve this, the services? Do they consistently bring new business your way, right? They're telling their friends and their family and their associates about you. Are they reposting your post on social media? Like, what are your ideal customers doing to enhance the relationship they have with you and your business? And then going back to your competition for a moment, because regardless if your customers are walking into your building or accessing you online, or you're going to them, right? Like I said, you could be a cleaning service. You may be going to them. Either way, the reality is that your competition is either closer to them or closer to you, or more intensely, they surround you both, right? So we talked briefly about the various companies and we looked at the industry. Now I want you to really think about which companies are the giants in your industry. All right. And of these giants, how many are, have headquarters or satellite offices or any visible presence within 10, 20, 50, 100 miles of you and where you intend to set up shop? And then how many mid-size competitors are in close proximity to you? And then going further down that funnel, how many smaller size competitors with less than 50 employees are near you? 50 or less. Okay. Now, I asked if whether or not you had done market research, or whether or not you, to what extent, and whether or not you have looked to see what these other companies offer and their products and services, and the feedback from customers and current and former employees, and whether or not you've done a side-by-side comparison to what they provide. But I want to see whether or not you've already done a competitive analysis comparing those companies to each other by their tier level. So have you compared the giants to each other? Have you compared the mid-level companies to each other? Have you compared the smaller companies to each other to see the similarities and differences? Because we're going to dive into that in a future episode, but I just want to get your mind working and visualizing where it needs to be and what's required from you and your business to have a good footing when you do launch, when you do relaunch, when you start pivoting and shuffling things around. I want you to understand what goes into it, because just like you need to be analyzing the environment around you, understand that all of these companies are constantly analyzing their internal and external environments. Right? You want to be able to know who in your company don't like the food that they're serving, right? Which means that is not going to really generate more business for you if your employees don't even have, really buy in what you're selling, but also to, your customers, and then going beyond that, right? So it's important to have this type of analysis, but it's also important to see what other companies are doing good, great, amazing, or poor. They're not doing well at all. It's important to be able to have that information, because you need to be able to see where you stand against your potential competition. And to do so, you need to start with you. And we're going to look at, what that all entails in just a second. But I want to just make sure that I underline, because I know that sometimes people are like, well, I'm not really concerned about competition, or, I really don't have any competition because there's no one in our area. But as I said, you may not be looking at it the way it is. In addition to that, you're not understanding the importance of it. It's not a negative, it's a positive. Because a lot of times we can learn from other companies and what their best practices are. and apply them to our own business. You don't have to turn around and be like, oh, I'm not going to do it because they're doing it. If they're doing it and it's a great idea, it's a great approach, you love what they're offering to their employees, then why wouldn't you do it? Like, you're like, wow, that's a great idea. I can do that too. I'm glad I saw that they did that. We can run with that as well. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like you're taking somebody's recipe and using it as your own. It's not the same, right? You're not saying, these are our recipe, and come to find out it's actually Bisquick or whatever, right? This is our cornbread, and all some people are like, this sure does taste like Jiffy cornbread, and find out it is Jiffy cornbread. You just added some honey to the mix. So back to what I was talking about, starting with you when you're looking at your own analysis and what it takes. Last week we did the heart and mind check, right? We did that analysis of looking within ourselves, but it's important that you are considering the strengths and weaknesses of your company. And you may or may not see and address the various opportunities for success or the threats that can potentially destroy everything. And a lot of business owners pursue the path, of entrepreneurship, of business ownership for their own personal reasons, but then feel that they fail to see how they personally impact their business and the ideas that they nurture or poop all over, right? And so traditional business plans will incorporate a SWOT analysis to determine the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the organization. And some people don't like SWOTs. And a lot of people don't like SWOTs because either people are reckless with them, they're lackadaisical with them, there's some interest but not commitment to it. So it's kind of like they just throw gum on the wall and say, oh, we did it. They're just checking boxes. So some people are repulsed by SWOTs because people have abused the process. I can appreciate it because in the way in which I approach a SWOT, I'm approaching it like a surgeon. I'm approaching it like someone who needs to come in and see what's going on and how this can benefit us or how it can harm us. And so it's something that I realized well over 15 plus years ago, was that the SWOT has less value if you aren't also incorporating an individual SWOT of your key players. And so if you don't know their strengths and their weaknesses, then how can you really analyze the strengths and weaknesses of your company? So you and your workers are internal, just as the strengths and weaknesses you'll be identifying and examining. So how do you truly build an inventory of intellectual capital if you don't spend the time tapping into the minds and hearts of those who make the wheels go round, right? So, you lead the way by always doing a SWOT on yourself every single year. Because hopefully you are strengthening your strengths, probably actually, gaining strengths. Maybe some of your weaknesses have dissipated or you've leveraged them to your gain. Maybe there are certain opportunities that you actually seized, and so now you have some more opportunities. Maybe there are some new threats because now you've, become bigger and better, and there's other things that could potentially derail your plans because folks are like, we're gunning for you, right? So you're like, oh gosh, we got some threats now because we've got some, publicity and we're booming. And everything is going great. Our revenue is going through the roof. And now we have folks that are trying to gun for us because they fear that we're going to take more of their market share. So we got to be mindful of this. And then we got our haters that come up just because they can't believe that we came out of nowhere, even though we've been grinding for 10 years. It took us 10 years to get to that, right? People never know the behind the scenes stuff. So anyway, you got to make sure that you do a SWOT on yourself every year, in addition to the SWOT that you do on your company every year. And then you're reviewing it quarterly. You're refining it as needed. And as you build your team, you require them to do a self-analysis on themselves, right? And you then take that data, and that's what's then factored into the company SWOT. Does that make sense? So like I always be seeing people that be doing SWOTs, and I'm like, okay, these are the strengths and weaknesses and stuff of your company. All of that, which is internal. Like, but how do you really know all of these details? How do you know if this is an exhaustive list in a way? And I don't mean that it's exhaustive to the point where you're like, okay, there's just no way for us to factor all this in. But I mean, how do you know that you've actually tapped into what you've tapped into, or whether or not you just did some kind of, scaling? Like, when you take a knife and you kind of skim for, when you're getting butter, you kind of skim it, you're just getting like, how do you know what you're getting? You could just be skimming the surface. You really don't even know what you have in your company. You're not keeping a database on the various languages and skills and strengths and the different, all the intellectual capacity that you have, right? So seeing the external factors that can also serve as threats and opportunities on the micro and macro level are extremely beneficial to you. And so your personal SWOT will also help, with team design and development. You're looking at, your weaknesses and whether or not they're just merely your little marks, your issues for you. But also, looking at the various weaknesses and the strengths that you may have. And the same is true when you're reviewing your individual team member SWOTs. When you see a person that's good or comfortable with taking a risk, or if a person's a procrastinator, they're not good with telling stories or speaking in front of people or selling ideas, drafting pitch decks, writing reports, making cold calls, assembling widgets, or whatever it is. If you see someone strong at something or they're weak at something, it helps you to then zoom in on what you enhance, what you support, what you encourage, what you uplift, or what you redirect. Because rather than harbor resentment and dwell on it and shame people, you end up shaming folks into quitting, or you end up firing because you're so ticked off because they can't excel in an area that you need them to excel in. Find someone who can or who does, right? Find someone who is stronger where they are weak. Now, I'm not saying you keep everybody, because not everybody is meant for a relationship with your business. It's very clear. Like, I'm very clear on this. This is all about relationships. I don't believe in holding on to folks in a romantic relationship. I don't believe in holding on to people in a business one either. So, but if you find that someone is really strong in an area and you're like, oh my gosh, now you may not need that strength at this moment. It may be something where you're like, look, I'm going to help you position yourself elsewhere. We're going to need you later down the line. Will you be willing to come back and work with us? And whether it is they're working with you contractually, or whether or not you bring them back as an employee, I don't know how the case may be. Or maybe you can quickly pivot them into a new role that will benefit you, within the next 6 months. However the case may be, it is better than verbally and psychologically beating people down because they can't meet your needs. I mean, talking about egocentric and abrasive and abusive. We do it, and it's ridiculous. So find people who are strong in the areas where they're weak, just like you need to do for yourself. When you do that SWOT analysis on yourself, it does not make sense for you to sit back and to, carry around the shame and guilt and the inferiority complex of being weak in certain areas, when you know that means that you just need to hire, contract, get someone to volunteer to assume the areas and the roles where you are weak. If you are not good with numbers and accounting, then by golly, you need to find a person that you can trust to handle those numbers, explain them to you in a way so that you know that you're not being bamboozled and someone's not, doing some money laundering or something, behind your back. But so that you then can feel empowered and trust and have confidence in what you are seeing in those numbers, and you can clearly articulate them. So that when someone's asking you about the financials of your business, it's not you just saying, oh, well, you go talk to Sue about it. It's like, yeah, Sue can tell you about it, but let me give you an overview. Sue can go down to the more granular level, but at least I know. And no one can then turn around and say, she's a fool because she doesn't even know nothing about her business. And so this is going to be easy for us to then, do a coup, or we can turn around and just, gobble up her company, or we can just find a way to push her out of the market because, she's an idiot. And we see this happen. So it's important that you, just like you find out what your weaknesses are, you find people that can then fill in for where you're weak, where they're strong. The same as with your team members, right? For the most part. Now, just want to make sure I underline that because that is something that, Lord, gets on my nerves. So if they suck at sales, don't have them in the sales department. Make sense? All right. But if you find out they're strong with graphic artistry, design, software, this or that, whatever, bookkeeping, organizing, customer service, logistics, then work towards their strengths. Position them where they will thrive. But as I have to keep saying, before you start with them, you got to start with you. So understanding that the values and the culture of the company are built around you. What you value, you appreciate, fear, believe, want to know, want to do, want to have will drive your company on an amazing journey or over a cliff. Yep, you hear the engine roar. That engine was going over the cliff. It's like an amazing relationship. Until you know more about yourself and what you like and don't like, what you can do well in, or what you suck at, what you're willing to compromise on or sacrifice or not, you will then also be clueless as to what you're looking for in other people and the relationship that you and they will be bonded to through that relationship, through that employment contract, right? So you won't know how best they can serve your needs and you serve theirs if you don't first start with you. All right, I have talked long enough. I am determined not to have really long episodes tied to these multi-part series. So it's time for homework. Homework time. So your homework until, through the rest of this week and into next week, till the next episode, is to write or type out an exhaustive list of your personal strengths. Well, what you're good at, great at, exceptional at. You need to list all of them. Don't be shy, right? If you need to, ask some trusted family members and friends to help. Your company is depending on you to bring your A game, to bring your best, even during the worst moments. So after you list your strengths, I need you to list your weaknesses. I need you to write until you can't think of anything. And then once again, you can go to trusted friends and family to ask for assistance with this. And then look outside of yourself. And you're going to write what external opportunities could potentially catapult you to greatness. What possible opportunities could position you to achieve the dreams and goals that you want to pursue. And maybe it could be some grants or some loans or strategic alliances or partnerships or investments or an inheritance, whatever is outside of your control that could potentially benefit you. I want you to list them. And if you can't think of any, once again, reach out to trusted family and friends. And then lastly, what are the known and potential threats that can derail your plans, blow up your dreams, and not in a good way, right? What can prevent you from achieving greatness? What can just poo-poo on everything and just end it all? I need you to list all of those. And yes, even if it's a person or a group of people, list them. What are the barriers that you see that scare or anger you? I want you to list them because the SWOT is extremely important. I don't want you to sugarcoat it. Don't go at it half-hearted. Attack it like your life depends on it. Because it does, right? The moves that you make, whether or not we have, the thing is that our physical death comes after our mental and spiritual death, right? We start to spiritually and mentally die before our body actually gives up. Well, that is the same within our business. And the thing is, and we are in the heart, and we bring all these other people in to be all of the organs and the limbs and everything that flows in and out of this business. Understand you need to take this and be intentional about it. Because your SWOT is not just for this business. This SWOT is going to help you in every element of your life, your personal, your professional, your spiritual, everything. You're going to be able to utilize this in multiple ways. So I want you to be very, very, very intentional with this. Be committed to it. All right? If you don't know yourself, the layers within that make you you, and all of the external energies that are either flowing to you, for your uplift or rushing to you for your downfall. If you don't know this, then you don't know what you're made of when threats come. And trust me, they will come. And many won't be on your list because your mind probably won't allow you to conceive the notion of absolute destruction of your dreams, because the romanticized version is more palatable. But whether it be competition or haters or forces of evil, something and someone will always rise up to destroy what you're building. And if you aren't mentally and emotionally prepared and wisely equipped with the tools and resources needed for offensive and defensive plays, then you, my friend, will find yourself on the losing end of a blowout game, of the TKO that you didn't see coming, the blind side of all blind sides. So don't be selfish or careless with this. This conception, delivery, birth, and journey will require more of you than you can ever imagine. So respect it. Put in the work here and now so you're prepared for the battles and wars coming. Let's find your armor so you can suit up. I'm going to see you guys here next week. I need you ready to work. Don't come here playing with me. Come here ready to work. All right, it's that time. It's time for us to wrap up, go our separate ways until we see each other next. If you enjoyed what you heard today, I want you guys to please take some time to rate and review the podcast so that others can find us. We want to make sure that we give proper credit for our show's theme songs. They're by the talented Shane Ivers. I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to the Don't Call It Small Business podcast, for sharing these episodes with others, and for your continued support. And don't forget what we tell you on each and every episode. Don't call what you're planning, thinking, dreaming, or doing, little or small. Go big, go bold, or go nowhere. Have a super awesome day and week, and laugh whenever you get tongue-tied, just like I do. Take care. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, there's 4 things that we ask of you. First, please leave a rating and review. Second, be sure to connect with us on social media. Third, head over to foremanllc.com/podcast to sign up to our email list. And fourth, check out all the links and resources in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in to the Don't Call It Small Business podcast, for sharing these episodes with others, and for your continued support. And don't forget what we tell you on every episode. Don't call what you're planning, thinking, dreaming, or doing, little or small. Go big, go bold, or go nowhere. We can't wait to reconnect with you soon. See you next time.